Hello, we are back again with another episode on thinking through issues in Ghana and Africa. TTIGA. Last time we were talking about the free senior high school education in Ghana, and we almost ended up talking about how to sustain this system. We're going to continue from there to see how best or what Prempeh thinks about sustaining the policy. We also talk about boarding house issues. There have been some issues, right, in Ghana currently about the boarding house. Some people think that it has outlived its purpose. So we want to actually discuss it briefly. So again, Prempeh is with me. Prempeh, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Prempeh, I think I like your main station.
Yeah, well, I also like it because it gives me a chance when I'm learning.
Yeah, you're learning. I really like it.
I know very little.
No, you call that little?
Yes, I know very little and I'm still learning.
If you know little, I don't know what I know.
You know, I keep telling people my father when he was alive never had a cocoa farm.
Yeah, right. You know? You don't need a cocoa farm.
So my only cocoa is my head, which I carry about.
Okay, so I'm going to use that cocoa for chocolate.
Yes.
Hopefully I'll be smart.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's go straight into it. What do you think about this boarding house issue? So the professor came up recently to talk about it.
I think so far I've heard, in fact, the debate is ongoing. I've heard recently Dr. Nimoy Thompson repeated what Professor Arthur Edu, the great novelist, said that the boarding house system should be scrapped, because the system has, outlived its relevance. I respect their views as scholars and thinkers, but I humbly disagree with them. I think they have a very narrow understanding of the boarding house system. And so before I tell you why I think it should be maintained, I'll give a brief historical background of why we had a boarding system. Now, you see, when the missionaries, brought Christianity to Gold Coast and other places in Africa, one of their motive was to advance upon what they called the so-called civilizing mission, okay, which they considered was the white man's burden. Okay, so the white man had a burden, and that burden was so-called civilizing the non-civilized people, or the so-called primitive peoples. And you see, there are two groups of the Europeans went out to two separate wars, right? Both wars had before then not had very sustaining or lasting contact with Europeans. So in the East, or when they went to those who could read and write, those who went there were called Orientalists. Now those who went to cultures that could not read and write, they called themselves anthropologists. So you hear Orientalists and anthropologists. So that's how it came about. Okay. Now in the case of Gold Coast, when the missionaries went there, they thought that one way they could, as it were, as they called it, civilize the Ghanaian or the people of Gold Coast was through education. And to really enforce that, they had to do it in such a way that those who be educated will not be corrupted by the cultural idioms of the society within which they were born. So they had to be uprooted from their communities to a different location where they will be free from every influences coming from the societies within which they were born. So there was an attempt to deculturalize. So there was deculturalization. All right. So the French, for example, the French had a boarding system covering the entire, francophone countries or francophone West Africa, right? Where the policy of assimilation, where you got assimilated. So you were a black person, but French in mind. So in the case of the Europeans or the missionaries in Gold Coast, the understanding was that we are going to make Christians and Europeans out of the Ghanaian child. And the only way we could do that was to keep that child from being influenced by the culture within which he or she was born. Yeah. And that was why they introduced the boarding house system, or the boarding school system. Okay, so it was another form of what they call the Salem systems. You see, the Salem was where those who became Christians were isolated from the bigger, society. Of course, that was also, it wasn't the early part of missionary work in the 15th century, but around the 19th century. You see, because by the 15th century, the missionaries failed. In any case, they were not so much interested in Christianizing the people, as it were. Right? So one prominent scholar, Lamin Sene, calls it the Quarantization period of Christianity. But in the 19th century, beginning with the Basel missionaries, in 1828, when they came back, they were more organized and more ready to engage in mission work. So that was when the boarding house system actually gained prominency. Okay, so let's separate the people from where they were born, or the communities that birthed them, so that they will not be influenced by the culture into which they were born. So that was how the boarding house system existed. Okay. Now, today the question is, do we need to keep that philosophy? No, we don't. But do we need to keep the spirit of that philosophy? Yes, we have. And let me explain.
That'll be very interesting.
Yes. So, you see, I read Plato's Republic. Okay, Plato's Republic. And in Plato's Republic, one of the things he talked about was what the people he called the philosopher kings. Those who were to rule and how they were to be trained. Okay. Now, the philosopher kings were to be the brain workers. Those who would think to build society. I mean, if you ever read George Orwell's Animal Farm, when I was Bishop in England, when they were singing and they got a revolution, on the way, the pigs, Napoleon and God said, look, we are the people thinking. So all animals cannot feed on milk and they can't sleep on their bed. But we are thinking, so we have to do all those things. Because we are not like all of you, because we are doing the thinking, you are doing the work. Okay? Now that is how, Plato taught about the philosopher kings. They were to be given preferential treatment. They were to be trained in such a way that they could not compromise on their thinking abilities. Okay? To the extent that they were not to entangle themselves with family matters. So they could have children, they could have sex, and in the process impregnate women, but they were not to maintain family life. You may think that is stupid, but that's how you train leaders. Leaders must be trained in such a way that they will not get themselves compromised. They can think. You see, a leader must be able to see through the foggy world and be able to predict. But not all of us can do that, isn't it? So you need to train leaders in that way. That's how education is. If you read again the allegory of the cave, okay, again in Plato's Republic, where people lived in a cave, total darkness, and were comfortable in the darkness. One of them was forcibly pulled out of the darkness, and he saw the light. He was like, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Then eventually he adapted to the light, and then he became happy with the light. Then they pushed him back into the cave, and they almost killed him. So he told them, look, I've seen the light, there's something better out there. But what they had not seen, they wanted to kill him. That's education. So when it comes to education, we must provide the quintessential type of environment for people to receive education. It should be such that the child's learning process should not be obstructed by anything. By anything. Why am I saying this? And then why I think the boarding house system needs to be maintained until certain things happen. One, take the child in the village, in the remotest village in Ghana, where there's no light. Take the child in urban slums in Accra. I'm a Zango boy. I'm a resident of Mamobi. Most children in those communities don't even have a table and a chair to sit on to learn. Most of such children. One. And then two, most of such children combine work and schooling simultaneously. So they close from school, the next thing they are going to work. Most Zongo children or children in urban slums hardly have time to learn. Hardly. And that's why most of them don't pass to go to university. Not that they are not brilliant, but they get their minds divided. They straddle work and schooling. I have seen people sleeping in classroom because I taught at a point in my own community. You give them assignment, they don't do it. Or they get tired. By the time they come to school, they are so tired. The only chance for a Zango child to acquire knowledge uninterrupted is when they are in the boarding house. That is where for the first time they enjoy and they have the serenity of environment and then the peace of mind to learn. Without that, most of them can't make it. Most of them cannot make it. Now, in the case of the rich man's son, in fact, Dr. Nimoy Thompson said that his daughter or son is not in the boarding house. That is acceptable. That is, it's no news. Because your child definitely will have a chair and a table and a good environment to learn. Take the case of Nima and Mamobi, my own community, Mamobi. There is noise 24/7. Right? When I was schooling at a basic level, in fact, I went to WAS, right? From primary to WAS, I was a day student. It was not easy. It was just, I worked hard, but it was by dint of the grades that I passed. Most of these communities do not even have libraries. When I was in senior high school, my community didn't have a library at that time. Okay? Now, the only library available was Gold House, company. They had a library, but for their staff and for tertiary students. We were forced to learn behind the library. Okay, around Kakudi Junction. And around that time, it was bushy, so you had to struggle against snakes. No chair, nothing. You had to use stones to learn. If I had gone to boarding house, I would have done better than I did. Of course, I qualified. I passed. I didn't have any remedial. And I went to university, right? But there were a lot of people who couldn't make it because the condition was not good enough. So until we are able to remove the conditions that breed failure among the poor person's child, we should keep the boarding system. How do we sustain it? He talks about food. That is expensive feeding them. That's not a challenge. We are told that if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. Yes. We need a nation of education. If you think education is expensive, try ignorance. This statement is associated with many people. In fact, one of them was a former Harvard president, Derek Bock, right? But many people are assumed to have made that statement. But at least I remember him for saying it because I read it somewhere in one of my readings. Now, we can't have, when it comes to education, even if we have to sell everything to acquire knowledge, we should sell and get knowledge. Remember in our previous episode, I said that we have moved from material-based resource to knowledge-based resource. What it means eventually is that we need to invest every pesewa into educating people. So the government should not cry over spending money. We spend money over per diem and all those things. Why can't we invest in education? The best my father could give me, a poor man, a peasant, was education. Education is liberating. Now, in the 15th century, Francis Bacon made a statement, okay, that knowledge is power. This was repeated by Michel Foucault in the 1970s. Why did they say that? Because knowledge is liberating. Okay? When people are educated, they liberate themselves. Their minds are liberated. Now, the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, may peace of Allah be upon him, he said, seek knowledge, even if it means going to China. Okay? Now, he said that because, now remember at that time, China was way away from Arabia. And the means of transition was, it would take you months and if not even a year. Literally, he was not saying walk, but he said spend and don't leave any stone unturned when it comes to seeking knowledge. The Bible says the same thing. So learn to show thyself approved. And the Bible says that for lack of knowledge, my people perish. So when it comes to the boarding system, we should maintain it until the conditions that breed failure in the poor man's home are solved.
Yeah.
Until we do that, we should allow it to hold.
I think you have a very good point, and
Yes.
it's interesting. I think people will share with you on
Yes.
that. But I'll be happy to get what people also think, so
Right.
we can have a
Yes,
discussion.
yes.
And anyway, my last question before we leave, because we don't have much time on this episode, is what do you think about like involving the pupils, the children, the school kids, in as stakeholders in sustaining senior high school
Yes.
education?
So-
because in the previous episode, you
Exactly.
were saying something about the children being
Exactly.
given some mechanistic work to do on the farm and all that.
You see, the point is that education rests on what I call a tripod. You see, a tripod. In the village, when you cook, you have a tripod. It's the tray. It sits on three things, so like 3 pillars. So we call it the tripod.
The buchia.
Yeah. So that's how education system sit. It sits on a tripod. So the government, the pupil, student, and then the parent, right? They form the structure of the school. So we cannot lay the responsibility squarely on the political elite or the government alone, or the school administrators alone, but also parents and pupils. So here we are focusing on pupils. What can they do? And I said this briefly in our previous recording, that look, you see, the idea of child labor itself, we'll talk about it someday, needs to be conceptualized, right? You don't talk about, you see, when I was growing up, at the age of 10 years, I started selling to help my parents in my movie. My parents did not see that as well, child labor. They were training me for life. He said, teach the child how to fish, not how to eat. I'm not saying that we should subject them to intense labor, okay? But one way of sustaining the policy is to make sure food is readily available. Good news, the government is doing well, so the planting for food has generated some benefit to the nation. What we can do now is to involve the peoples in food production. I'm not saying that they should go and be digging and doing all those kinds of things. I'm looking at mechanized agriculture with the input of children or peoples, senior high school peoples. So you have the machines working, clearing the land, and the children drop. You see, because until we have machines that will do the planting for ourselves, the children can do that. So that instead of engaging children for entire 1 year learning, which in itself is unhealthy for their psycho-development, we should have a break where they can engage in non-academic activities that will lead to holistic development of the child. Those of us, and you also grew up in a Zongo community. When we were in school, we were playing alongside, okay, and that helped in our holistic development. So wherever you go, you can survive. So you were exposed to the hazards of life. I mean, even in science, if a baby is exposed to hazards early in life, the baby builds upon his immune system. That was the logic that was used during the slave trade era. So the child must not just enjoy. The child must know what it means to grow the food they are eating. Again, I'm not saying subject them to intense labor. Let them know how to grow the food they are doing or they are consuming. So the machines will clear the land, huge land. The children's job is to just, plug in the seeds.
Okay, I think
and we can do that just for about, a month.
To kind of like make them responsible.
Exactly. Let them have a feel. So you see, unfortunately in the world when people talk about right, nobody's talking about responsibility, as Gandhi said. Right? Everybody's talking about my right, but nobody's talking about my responsibility. So let them have a feel of life. So that when they grow, they will appreciate the essence of agriculture, the essence of food production. In any case, once you solve the food problem, everything then follows. All civilization, from Egyptian civilization to contemporary civilization, instead of agricultural revolution, when people moved away from foraging, right, and they lived sedentary life and they controlled the environment, domestication and farming, that was when civilization was birthed. Then they could think of going to the moon. So for me, that's what we need to get to.
Yeah.
At some point did it. University students were in the forest. Even Rollins' time, university students were there with him. That was when Rollins was called Junior Jesus, before he became a Junior Judas. We'll talk about that one day. Yeah. So for me, that's what we need to get to.
Okay.
So when I must repeat that I'm not saying we should subject them to intense labor, but I'm saying that they should have a feel of what it means to produce what they eat.
They should have a feel of responsibility.
Exactly.
As well. Anyway, thank you very much, Prempeh. So viewers, Prempeh has to say, boarding house in our senior high school shouldn't be scrapped. It shouldn't be scrapped. It should be kept until we have means of improving,
preventing the conditions that breed failure.
Exactly.
In poor man's home.
He's looking at the boarding house in terms of failure in the poor man's home, using his Zongo as an experience.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for listening. Please add your comment. What is your take on it? Free Senior High School is ongoing and we love it so much. We want to know what you think about it. Until we meet again, bye.
Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children